Okay. Today, yes, we are going to read through the book of Hosea. Hosea is actually listed first in our Bibles in the collection of the minor prophets, which close out the Old Testament. I'm not entirely sure why. I looked up a different number, I looked up different explanations for why the books are arranged the way they are. I don't think Hosea came first chronologically in terms of the first of the writing prophets to come along. He may have, someone at some point in time may have thought Hosea was first, so they put him, I don't know, I really don't. Like I said, I've read a few different explanations for why the books are in the order they are in, and I honestly don't know. I don't know, I really don't. At any rate, Hosea is listed first of the minor prophets in our copies of the Old Testament. And we are going to read through Hosea today. Hosea, okay, so now for the background, my typical introduction background information. Hosea is a priest in the northern kingdom. Okay, so we read, the last prophet we read was Amos. And we read that Amos was a shepherd, a sheep herder and a tree cutter from the southern kingdom, Judah, who went to the northern kingdom and prophesied there, apparently for a pretty short time. He went up there, he gave his message, they yelled at him, he finished his message, and apparently then left. They told him to get out, and apparently he did get out after he finished his message, and he went back home, and presumably spent the rest of his life raising sheep and taking care of trees. Apparently. He dates his prophecy to this earthquake, which happened a couple of years after his message was delivered orally, and then at some point after that he had it written. He either did it himself or he spoke it out loud while someone else wrote it down. Amos is pretty easy to grasp in terms of its content, its delivery, and its timing. Hosea is a lot more difficult. Hosea had a much longer prophetic career. He's going to date himself at the beginning of the book to the reigns of several different kings who had, period of rule that goes 30, 40 years or whatever. So it's really, unlike Amos, who seemed to who came from the south, went to the north, delivered a specific message, apparently for a fairly short period of time, and then left, and then went back home and wrote about it. Hosea had a long, ongoing ministry. And to a large degree, it appears as though he was called to live as an example to the people around him in the north. Unlike Amos, Amos was not a native northerner. Amos was from the south, he went to the north, he gave his message, he confronted the leaders of his day, then he left. Hosea is apparently a native northerner who lived in the north for a good chunk of his life, if not apparently all of it, but a good chunk of it. Apparently fled the north eventually before it fell, but otherwise stayed there for, most of his prophetic ministry. And apparently was called to live by example in front of the people. And do this, and do this like until for a long time. He eventually would have had to have left the north and gone to the south, because he dates his prophecies go beyond the fall of the south, or beyond the fall of the north. So at some point he would have had to have left the northern kingdom of Israel to go to the southern kingdom of Judah, but I don't know when. His prophetic ministry started, apparently, when he was called by God sometime late in the reign of Jeroboam II. Remember that long reigning king from the first half of the 700s BC, who was the ruler of Israel during the most powerful and prosperous time. He started his ministry apparently sometime late in Jeroboam's reign, similar to Amos for that matter, around the same time Amos did. Unlike Amos, who came and went, Hosea stayed. He was there and he stayed around, and he was called to marry a woman and live a life with this woman and the kids this woman would have that would illustrate as a physical example of God's relationship with Israel. And so this would have been going on for some time. He has this woman. There's at least 3 kids recorded that this woman has. And these children factor into the ministry. The wife and the children factor into Hosea's ministry. So there would have been, and they would have been like living, visible, physical examples of the lessons that God wanted to teach Hosea and wanted Hosea to teach the people. So this would have been going on for a period of time. You would have had a marriage. You would have had 3 different conceptions and weanings and births. You have 3 different conceptions and pregnancies and births, and then weaning processes, and then the children growing up. And so this will take place over a period of time. And so Hosea, unlike Amos, who went up there, gave his message, left, apparently, and then at some point later recorded down what he had said during his speaking career, Hosea here is giving us, I think, a retrospective or a reflection of a much longer period of ministry. So I don't know, we have the substance of Hosea's message here in this book, but Hosea probably had, remember how we read Jonah, and we read the book of Jonah, and he was a prophet from the north, but the book is about him ministering to Assyria, of all places, Nineveh to be specific, and we have very little information on what he actually said when he was there. The point of the book is less about the substance of his message and more about the story or the narrative of his refusal to actually communicate that message. And so the actual speaking of Jonah is reduced to a short sentence, like 48 more days and Nineveh will be overthrown. We don't have page to page to page of him preaching to the people, which he probably did, at least for one day. It said that he was there for one day. So even that one day, however much he said that one day, is condensed to 8 words or whatever in our Bibles. So Hosea would have preached and would have ministered to the people over a span of many years, and the bulk and the content of his message now is condensed into this 14-chapter book, 14 chapters as we've divided it, that sum up his message to the Israelites. But he would have been giving this message, and again, living with physical examples in his wife and these children as physical, visible examples of these concepts to the people over the course of many years. By the time Hosea, so what is unclear to me, okay, so that's like the background here. We know this because I can say very confidently that Hosea is speaking from a point of view, from a time, the message that we have recorded here is encompassing information that and talking about things, events, developments that pertain to the last couple of decades of the Northern Kingdom's existence, from the time Jeroboam dies, basically until their fall to Assyria. He does not explicitly talk about them going into captivity into Assyria. But he does talk about some things that happened very, very late in their history. For example, he's going to refer to the Israelites going back and forth between selling their allegiance to Assyria and Egypt. We read in the historical books, Kings and Chronicles, that they did do this. Menahem was one of the kings during this time, and he paid tribute to Tiglath-Pileser, the king of Assyria, to leave him alone. Then his successors didn't like that. They wanted to fight, so they got rid of Menahem, and they fought but lost their territory. And then Hosea, the last king, by the way, who had the same name as this guy, the last king of Israel, also pays tribute to Assyria, but secretly goes behind the king of Assyria's back and makes an alliance with Egypt. And that gets found out by the king of Assyria, and he comes and destroys them for it. And this book is going to talk about the going back and forth between Assyria and Egypt. And the only record we have of them doing that is in the reign of the last king, Hosea, whose name is also Hosea, by the way, in the 720s BC. And so near the very, 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 very end of the northern kingdom. In fact, that was actually kind of the impetus for their fall. When the king of Assyria found out that they were making plans, the king of Egypt, behind his back, that's what caused him to come and attack them and destroy them, once and for all. And Hosea will mention this. He will mention going back and forth between Assyria and Egypt. So my guess is that this book reflects a time period in which Hosea is giving us the content of his message as it existed, the substance of his message from all throughout his career as a prophet, and is speaking to the people as they are declining and about to fall. Hosea apparently left Samaria, the northern kingdom, and went to Judah. I'm not clear on whether he wrote his prophecy down, because his speaking prophecy, like his ministry as a living speaking prophet, was to the northern kingdom. I'm not clear, when he writes it down and leaves it in this form, I'm not clear if he's doing that for the sake of the northern kingdom or the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom would be very close to being obliterated by the time Hosea is writing down these things. It may already have fallen, because Hosea's ministry as a prophet apparently extends beyond the time the northern kingdom fell. He doesn't actually specifically mention that, but he does, like I said, he does talk about things that happen very, 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 very close to the end of the northern kingdom. So it could be that when he's writing it down for the benefit of the southern kingdom, because the northern kingdom is already gone by that point. I'm not sure. At any rate, that is the background of Hosea. He is called to be a living, visible. He is called to serve as a living, visible example of what God is going through, as God has entered this covenant relationship with Israel, and Israel has broken this covenant repeatedly over the course of centuries. And God is about to divorce them. Okay, God is about to sign them a certificate of divorce and send them away. So Hosea is called to physically, visibly minister before God and before the people on behalf of God by marrying a woman who is going to be unfaithful to him and who is going to bear children that are not his, and to a point where he eventually sends her away, and then he calls her back, and then he has to go back and get her back again, as God will do for Israel even after he sends her away in divorce. And again, this would take time. None of this is not going to happen like in the span of 6 months or a year. Amos apparently went from the south to the north, gave a series of sermons, maybe even just one long sermon, I'm not sure, in Bethel, or maybe in other cities around them, but mainly in Bethel, and then left. Jonah, when he went to Nineveh, apparently was only there for 1 day, at least from what's mentioned in his book. But Hosea's ministry would have gone on for many years. And so the content that we have here reflects the substance of his ministry, and it's not a comprehensive account of everything he said. It can't be. It can't be. Okay, so that's the introduction to Hosea.